This is a Squiz Kids podcast. Your fresh take on what's happening in the world around you.
It was one of the darkest moments in modern history. It happened less than 100 years ago, and to this day it is held up as a reminder of why tolerance of others is so important and why commemorating bad things that have happened in history is an important way of helping to ensure that they don't happen again. This is your Squiz Kids Shortcut to Remembering the Holocaust, the podcast where we dive into the who, what, where, when, why and how of the big news stories. I'm Christy Kijarina.
And I'm Bryce Corbett.
Now, Bryce, today is January 27, an important day around the world as it is Holocaust Memorial Day. And this year, 2026, marks the 81st anniversary of this really important day. So today we're going to explain to Squiz Kids what the Holocaust was, who the Holocaust impacted, and why it's important to stop every year and think about big and often dark moments in human history like this one.
Listen carefully because there's a quiz at the end.
Who?
The Holocaust is something that happened to the Jewish people during World War II. That was about 85 years ago. But before we talk about the Holocaust, I think we need to start with a really important question. Who are Jewish people?
Yeah, because sometimes people hear the word Jewish and they might think it means just one thing.
Exactly. Jewish people are connected by a shared history, culture, and a religion called Judaism. And Judaism is one of the oldest religions in the world.
But, Christy, being Jewish isn't just about religion, right?
That's right. It's so much more than that. Some Jewish people are religious, but some aren't. But they might still share traditions, stories, food, language, or a sense of community, in the same way that you might be part of a Christian or a Muslim, Buddhist, or Hindu community. Because you were born into it, even if you don't go to church or the mosque or the temple.
And just like Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, and Hindus, Jewish families live in many different countries around the world. They speak lots of different languages and live very different lives to one another. Just like any group of people, they're not all the same. So, where did the misunderstanding start?
Oh, that's a good question. For thousands of years, Jewish communities often lived as minorities, which is to say they were a smaller group within often much larger ones. And during times of fear or hardship, people sometimes looked for someone to blame. Throughout history, Jewish people have often been unfairly blamed for problems that they didn't cause.
And that's where false stories and stereotypes about Jewish people came to exist. False ideas were passed down over time, even though they weren't true. And when lies are repeated often enough, Christy, they can start to feel normal, which is dangerous.
So it's really important to say this clearly. Jewish people aren't defined by those lies, and they're definitely not defined by what happened later in history. Jewish people existed long before the Holocaust, and they continue to live rich, full, and wonderfully varied lives today.
And remembering that helps us to understand that what happened next wasn't about who Jewish people were, it was about the people who mistreated them. So, Christy, what was the Holocaust?
What?
The Holocaust was a time when Nazi leaders targeted Jewish people and some other groups of people that they believed were unacceptable.
Now, this happened during World War II. The Nazis were a political group who took control of Germany in the 1930s, led by a man called Adolf Hitler. The Jewish people were persecuted by the Nazis, which is to say they were singled out and started to be bullied by the Nazis, with words and with actions. And what's important to understand is that all of this didn't start with physical violence.
No, it started with words and the spreading of lies. The Nazis used speeches, posters, newspapers and radio to spread lies about Jewish people. They blamed them for problems in Germany that they didn't cause and made it seem like Jewish people had no place in German society.
Now, those lies were built on an idea called anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is hatred or unfair treatment of Jewish people. And as we said earlier, when lies are repeated again and again, they can start to feel normal, even if they're completely untrue.
Yep, and over time, those words turned into actions. Jewish people were slowly stripped of their rights. Jewish mums and dads were banned from certain jobs. Jewish children were excluded from schools. Synagogues, which are Jewish places of worship, like a mosque or a church, they were burnt down. Jewish businesses were targeted by vandals. Jewish people were subjected to random acts of violence, and generally, as a people, they were treated as if they mattered less.
And then, Christy, if you can imagine, things became worse. Much, much worse. During the Holocaust, millions of Jewish people were forced from their homes, separated from their families, and often taken to concentration camps where they were killed.
Historians estimate that around 6 million Jewish people were killed during the Holocaust. 6 million! And remember, every one of those numbers represents a real person, just like you and me.
Now, as we were saying, many people were imprisoned in places called concentration camps. These were essentially a series of jails where Jewish people were forced into slave labour, living in inhumane conditions. Many died of starvation and disease. Many others were killed in the most barbaric ways. It's incredibly hard to understand, but explaining it honestly helps us to see just how dangerous hatred and misinformation can become, how important tolerance of others is, and it sets us up to understand why remembering this history still matters very much today.
Why?
So after hearing about that terrible time, the big question becomes, why do we still remember the Holocaust? And one reason has to do with today's date. On January 27, 1945, just 81 years ago, soldiers liberated Auschwitz, one of the worst concentration camps.
And when we say liberated, we mean that soldiers arrived and freed the people who were being held there. The guards were gone and the prisoners were no longer trapped.
And it was the first time the outside world really saw what had been happening inside Nazi concentration camps. And thanks to journalists who sent back photos and reports from the camps, the world was shocked and ashamed. That's why January 27 is now International Holocaust Remembrance Day. It's a day to remember the millions of people who were killed and to honour the survivors who lived through it and later shared and are still sharing their stories.
And Chrissy, remembering isn't just about the past. It matters today because hatred, lies and misinformation sadly still exist. And when people are targeted because of who they are, history shows us how serious that can become.
Yeah, that's right, Bryce, especially after events like the violent attack on Jewish people in Bondi in December last year. It reminds us that anti-Semitism didn't disappear after World War II.
At the heart of it, Christy, people everywhere want the same things. To live safely, to be treated fairly, and to belong to a community.
That's right, and remembering the Holocaust helps us to notice warning signs early. Things like bullying, discrimination, or lies being spread about a particular group of people, a race, or a religion. It reminds us that words matter, speaking up matters, and kindness matters.
So, remembering doesn't mean living in fear. It means choosing kindness, appreciating difference, standing up for others, and helping to make sure that something like the Holocaust never happens again. That's why we remember.
Time for the Squiz.
This is the part of the podcast where you get to test how well you've been listening. Question number 1. True or false? The Holocaust happened more than 500 years ago. That's false. It happened during World War II, back in the 1930s and 40s.
Question number 2. Which word describes hatred or unfair treatment of Jewish people? Is it A, anti-socialism, B, anti-Semitism, or C, antibiotics? Great listening if you knew that the answer is B, anti-Semitism.
Question number 3. What does it mean when a place like Auschwitz was liberated? Well done if you said it meant soldiers arrived and freed the people who were being held captive there.
Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining us as we explored the who, what, where, when, why and how of remembering the Holocaust.
Now, as we say every day at the end of these podcasts, get out there and have a most excellent day.
Over and out.